the summer residence of the Pope in Castel Gandolfo, just south of Rome. Inside the two domes, perched atop the papal palace, are the Vatican's telescopes. David Brown is a Jesuit priest and an astrophysicist. He was born in New Orleans and took his doctor's degree in Oxford. Now he is one of the Stargazers for His Holiness. Father Brown feels this observatory is special. The dome has to be opened by hand, the old-fashioned way, and the astronomers like having nothing between them and the heavens. The German Zeiss telescope has served well for over 70 years. Father Brown focuses on individual stars and planets.
Perfect, we've got it. Jupiter and 4 moons. All of the moons are on the left-hand side of it.
Does he see the moon and stars as God's creation or as scientific objects made of dust and rock, doomed one day to be sucked into the oblivion of a singularity?
The person who's looking through it, for example, the Pope or a brother or a priest who is using the telescope, he's looking directly at a scientific object and he's approaching it that way. So in that sense, he's not looking directly at God, but when he sees the beauty of the sky at night and the object that is just one out of many millions, in some sense, it is looking at sort of the fingerprint of God or the glory of God that we're brought back, for example, to Psalm 8, I believe, which says, "The heavens proclaim the glory of God, and the firmament shows forth His wonder."
Astronomy brings heaven and earth, the visible and invisible, together. Do the stargazers search for clues to life itself and how it came to be? The observatory of Castel Gandolfo was dedicated by Pope Pius XI in 1935 and has been frequented regularly by the popes ever since. A photo of Pope John XXIII in the astrophysics laboratory. Pope Paul VI observed the moon as the first man set foot on it in July 1969. There is no other comparable research facility in the Vatican. For decades, George Coyne was the director of the Specula Vaticana, as the Pope's observatory is called. He considers the question of the origin of life, both as a theologian and as an astronomer.
Stars are born and they die. As they're born and die, they create the heavier elements. That's the only way we get carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and iron. So the stars have created the elements from which life could come to be. And as a matter of fact, at least in this one instance, did come to be. So in that sense, scientifically, we are made of stardust. We're made of stars. But in this case, both scientifically now, but then adding on the implication, scientifically, this being, a human being that has been made of stardust, has developed consciousness. That is, the universe in the human being, and that's a big step.
If it is true that the body of man came from stardust and developed consciousness, what about the body of Jesus Christ?
If my faith is correct, that Jesus Christ, truly God and truly man, then he was made of stardust.
Father Coyne believes in the Holy Ghost and in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. He says that his science does not contradict his faith, and even now, science is unable to explain how and why life came to be. The first papal observatory stood behind St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican Gardens. Even before that, observation towers were built on the Vatican grounds to chart the position of the sun. The Jesuit order has had observatories of its own in Rome since the 16th century. The Vatican started building its observatories much later. Modern telescopes were installed in the late 19th century. While the popes and the priests contemplated the heavens through the lens, the nuns charted them using photographic plates. Some 10,000 of these plates are still archived in the observatory's cabinets. By 1935, the big city lights of Rome outshone all but the brightest stars in the night sky, and the Specula Vaticana was moved to Castel Gandolfo for a clearer, unobscured view. The astronomers lodge in a former monastery. Many of the researchers at the Specula Vaticana are Jesuit priests. Father Sabino Maffeo has worked in the Vatican Observatory for over 40 years. He's written a book chronicling its history. The Pope's Observatory has an excellent reputation in the scientific community. The scientist priests look into the theories of relativity, quantum physics, evolution, and the Big Bang. They've captured images of the heavens that earned them the respect of astronomers the world over.
Pope Leo XIII practically founded the Specula Vaticana in 1891. In the foundation decree, he said that we were starting the Specula to demonstrate that the Church is not against science, to demonstrate that the clergy isn't as ignorant in matters of science as many would have us believe.
Instead of outer space, Father Brown is looking through shelf space for the first treatises of modern astronomy.
This book here is by Galileo Galilei on his System of Two Worlds, one of the books which is in our collection of antique books.
The Specula Vaticana's library holds 22,000 volumes, including scholarly works and journals on the priests' areas of expertise: dark matter, cosmology, galaxies, and the acceleration of the universe. The early writings on astronomy are priceless treasures. First editions of Galileo, Kepler, Newton, and Copernicus.
What we have here is Copernicus's most famous work, the De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium, which is the book in which he advances his famous theory of the sun being at the center of the system with the planets, including the Earth, revolving around it, which represented a break from the Ptolemaic system, which said that the Earth was at the center of the universe and that everything else went around it. The importance of Galileo's work. This book right over here being his dialogue on two systems, where he puts forth the Copernican hypothesis and involves it in a comparison with the old Ptolemaic system.
Galileo Galilei was an observer, the father of telescope astronomy. His contemporary, Johannes Kepler, calculated that the planets and their moons followed elliptical orbits. The two great minds anticipated Isaac Newton.
What Newton did is that he provided the theory of motion that was able to explain why it was that the celestial bodies moved in a particular way. That gravity, as explained in the Principia, is what governs the motions of the celestial objects.
Key objects of the papal astronomers' investigations are meteorites that have been found on Earth. Analysis of them yields insights into the makeup of other heavenly bodies. Jose Funes of Argentina is a Jesuit and currently director of the Specula Vaticana. What does he see in the stones from on high?
Here we have meteorites from the Specula Vaticana's collection. Just some of them. The solar system is about 4 billion years old. The chemical makeup and the density of the meteorites' various layers provide evidence as to how they were created. They are pieces of the solar system, and they give us clues about how the Earth and Earth-like planets were created.
Della propria Tierra, no? Come si è formata la Tierra e los otros planetas que son semejantes a la Tierra.
The Stargazers have long been contemplating the Big Bang theory, as well as the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Would God's promise of redemption apply to all living beings in the universe?
Todo el universo.
The whole universe was created by God. If other intelligent beings exist, they would be God's creatures as well. And everything, all the universe is filled with God's mercy. All the universe, as St. Paul said, is to be redeemed by God. And that's a message of hope.
In 1994, the papal astronomers moved to Arizona in America's desert southwest. The ever brighter lights of Italy's Mediterranean coast had begun to obscure the night sky over Castel Gandolfo as well. In the 17th century, the Jesuit Father Kino opened a mission station on the site where this church stands now. He was an astronomer too, and from here, he surveyed the heavens. Atop the 3,200-meter summit of Mount Graham in Arizona is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, or VAT. The skies here are as clear at night as during the day when the papal stargazers sleep. The nearby radio telescope, on the other hand, can work day and night. It picks up and localizes radio signals from the cosmos. The VAT is a 180-centimeter reflector telescope that can detect infrared sources, light that's invisible to the human eye. Father Chris Corbally has arrived from Tucson. As both a theologian and a scientist, he follows the ongoing debate in the U.S. between the proponents of intelligent design and of so-called creationism.
Creationism will have everything there from the beginning. Intelligent design means, yes, there's been development, but there are certain sort of jumps in the development that cannot come through just the physics and the biology working. There has to be something else, an intelligent designer producing that new thing. Mm-hmm. And to my mind, it's not giving nature enough, as it were, imagination. And nature's imagination shows in the way that it has solved the same problem in a variety of ways. One such is the ability to see that in various creatures has been solved in different ways. There are different kinds of eyes. A bird's eye is different from a human eye. And in some ways, our human eye is not the best design at all.
Anyone who delves into the vast diversity of nature and the universe is likely to find it hard to relate to the idea that it all came about in a single act of creation only 6,000 years ago. Joining the VAT and the radio telescope in 2004 was the LBT, or Large Binocular Telescope. As its name implies, it's a kind of double telescope. It has a collecting area of 111 square meters, larger than any other reflector telescope. It can observe phenomena that are so far away in time and space that they give a glimpse of the creation of the galaxies, and indirectly, of the Earth. The LBT can also capture infrared images of far distant objects. It's a joint project of Italian, American, and German institutes and universities. After preliminary testing, the LBT saw first light in binocular mode in the spring of 2008, when it achieved full resolution. The images from the Vatican telescope and the LBT both are of exceptional brilliance and a fascinating beauty, much of which is lost through television transmission, stars and galaxies. Confronted with a spectacle like this, layman and specialist alike naturally wonder how it all began.
The questions we always ask, that all people ask sometime, are where did we come from and where are we headed? Astronomy may have discovered many things over the past 200 or 300 years, but the basic questions, how is our universe created? And how will our universe eventually end up? These questions are still just the same as ever.
A German consortium has developed a near-infrared camera and spectrograph for the LBT and dubbed it LUCIFER. It diffracts light into its different wavelengths, the colors of the spectrum. It's used to analyze the composition of objects in space, even in other galaxies. Such high-tech astronomy often makes it easy to lose sight of the forest for all the trees, or to lose sight of the higher purpose for all the stars.
For me, the religious aspect gets pushed pretty far back compared to the scientific aspect, just because I think science will get you further. But on the other hand, I think religion can be a help to people as well, and I don't think the two directly contradict each other. Albert Einstein was also deeply religious.
Night is falling over the Vatican telescope. The Jesuit stargazers can see millions of light years out in space and back in time. Father Richard Boyle and his colleague from Ireland are investigating a fairly recent discovery, the brown dwarf. The first was identified in 1988. These bodies are something in between a star and a planet.
Nice. Minus, let's say, take 15 minutes away from that, so 1 hour and 15 because of that bad cloud. So I want to be getting another 2 hours.
Many times the size of Jupiter, brown dwarfs can only be distinguished from a small star by the presence of lithium in their atmospheres.
They occupy the size of a star between bigger than a giant planet like Jupiter and smaller, less mass than our sun. And so it's a new area of study in astronomy.
Leon Harding, a specialist in brown dwarfs, has come to observe them at the VAT. Brown dwarfs are not massive enough to sustain a fusion reaction.
That's what defines a star. The star burns and then the fuel runs out and then it dies. But because these stars don't ignite, they're very red, so they're much cooler. So with optical observatories, with optical telescopes, when you observe in the kind of more reddish colors, it gets far more faint, so it's very hard to actually observe.
The Jesuits are moving into uncharted territory. Many questions have yet to be answered, and many details filled in before the picture of the brown dwarf is complete. The researchers hope to find some of them from the top of Mount Graham. Back at Vatican City in Rome, the Church aims to promote science and culture. The Pontifical Council for Culture is represented at many international symposiums, congresses, and major film festivals. The Pontifical Academy of Sciences includes physicists, biologists, theologians, and social scientists, with over 24 Nobel laureates among them. Pope Benedict XVI is himself an accomplished scientist. He consults his astronomers regularly at the observatory and in Rome. This stone relief in St. Peter's testifies to the importance of astronomy for the early popes. The reform of 1582 that created today's Western or Gregorian calendar was named after Pope Gregory XIII. At Gregory's behest, astronomers and mathematicians found the exact length of the solar year and devised a simple calendar to match it. Here, Gregory XIII is surrounded by his advisors, among them Christopher Clavius, a Jesuit from Bamberg, Bavaria. They're shown presenting him with a celestial globe and mathematical calculations. Proposals for a reform of the calendar had been made since the 14th century, but they had all been rejected. Behind St. Peter's in Vatican City stands the Palazzo di Governatorato. This is where the director of the Vatican Observatory has his office. Cardinal Giovanni Laiolo serves as the de facto president of Vatican City. He's the third most powerful man here after the Pope. He's committed to promoting the dialogue between religion and science.
Die Heilige Schrift spricht in verschiedenen Stellen.
At various points, the Holy Scriptures speak of the proof of God's wisdom and power being evident in the universal order. How can you have these mathematical laws in the universal order? Are they just the product of chance? Is it conceivable that chance would produce such a perfectly logical and mathematical order? If you say yes, then you're saying we need no God. If you say no, as we believe, then it's necessary to conceive of a superordinate power. That's the origin of all these logical and mathematical laws.
Sich vorstellt, der Ursprung all dieser Gesetze, logischen mathematischen Gesetze ist.
400 years ago, the Vatican suppressed Galileo's discoveries. Now it's dedicating an exhibition to his work in astronomy, his instruments, and an original manuscript. Galileo used a telescope like this one to observe the heavens. Copernicus's great realization was that the sun, and not the earth, was the center of what we now call the solar system. Galileo discovered the 4 moons of Jupiter that are named after him. He was a devout Christian, but his research caused him to doubt some parts of the Bible. He made no secret of this and was called before the Inquisition. He spent the rest of his life under house arrest. Today, the Vatican says the Inquisition failed to understand Galileo's evidence. Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, an admirer of Galileo, was forced to condemn him.
Cardinal Bellarmine hatte in seinem großen
A few decades before, Cardinal Robert Bellarmine had written in his extensive Commentarium Lovaniense, if science gives us conclusive evidence that contradicts the Holy Scriptures, then we shall have to seek a new interpretation of the Holy Scriptures. Why? Because the truth cannot be inherently contradictory. The truth, like all being, was born of God.
During the summer, the observatory at Castel Gandolfo gives regular seminars. The Jesuit astronomers from the VAT in Arizona join aspiring researchers from all over the world. Some of them take part again and again. Sponsors and foundations in Germany are among those who support this work.
Here they don't care about who came from Oxford or Harvard or Cambridge. They care more about the summer school participants coming together for an international session, and that developing countries are included in this pursuit of science.
For a week, the participants attend presentations and debate the latest findings on astronomy. Included is research into the history of the science. One lecturer from Mexico spoke about astronomy's place in the civilization of the Maya.
In general, the pre-Columbian world was enveloped in religion, among many other aspects. The Mayan astronomers did not merely register astronomical figures, there was a religious feeling that associated what they saw up there with deities. So understanding how the heavens worked became a kind of astronomical cult.
Father David Brown is back at the Finder. Scanning the heavens, he immerses himself in the beauty of the night sky. To Father Brown, science is an expression of the power of the divine. But is faith alone sufficient? Can it pick up where science leaves off?
We scientists, we have to keep searching as scientists for further and deeper answers. And it's not fair. I'm a man of religious faith, and I do believe that God created the universe. but it would be a betrayal of God and of science if I tried to haul God in to explain what I have not yet been able to explain as a scientist. We have to keep that, we have to have the dialogue, but we have to keep that separation of religion, religious faith, okay, cannot supply for our lack of understanding scientifically.